kind of taking a shot at Vanderbilt, looking, practicing at Vanderbilt all week long. You've got players talking about how much pleasure they're taking in stomping on the Vandy logo while they're holding practice and at Vanderbilt, because Vandy's not doing anything right now. Tennessee's bowl eligible and playing in a big one today in their home state. And with the ability to establish, reestablish what this brand means for Middle Tennessee, to kind of isolate the surrounding area with the talent that Middle Tennessee is producing in high school football, to kind of improve upon the recruiting that maybe in-state. There was a ton of reasons why it didn't necessarily pan out for them in-state this year, but this is a great opportunity to be able to put on a tremendous product in front of a ton of home fans, because Nashville is rocking with orange today. There's going to be a lot of Vols fans at Nissan Stadium to watch them overtake Purdue. And frankly, there's not a lot of players missing in this bowl game. You've got opt-outs all over college football right now, but so far for the Vols, the only two players who aren't going to be available are Alante Taylor and Cade Mays. Everybody else is full go. So you're going to get to see Hendon Hooker. You're going to get to see Cedric Tillman, two players who decided to return to this program because they know how special it is to be able to kind of build on what they've been able to do this season. And what they've been able to do this season, I think, has by far and away exceeded the expectations of fans, but now the expectation is to win today. Josh Heupel talked about this at his press conference yesterday. They held a joint press conference with him and Jeff Brom, the head coach at Purdue, and talking about just kind of what the to be bowl eligible means and what it means to be able to play in Nashville this way. Spent a lot of time talking about this throughout the course of the week. This is big-time stuff. And for Josh Heupel, when he spoke yesterday at his press conference, he talked exactly about how much this bowl game in particular matters. Here was the head coach of the Vols yesterday.
If you're a great competitor, and those are traits that we try to build and recruit to and have inside of our building every single day, and what you do, it does matter. It matters in how you perform. It matters to you individually and collectively as a team. And so certainly this is a game that our players have pushed towards to, and it matters a great deal inside of our program. And a bowl game is unique in that I think it's important that they enjoy the experience when you're at home in your preparation, when you get to the bowl site early in the week. But the carrot of the whole week and the thing that you'll remember most about the experience is the game itself.
That was Josh Heupel speaking in his joint press conference with Jeff Brom yesterday about the impact and how much this bowl game matters for the University of Tennessee. So we're going to be pre-gaming all morning long until the Vols kickoff this afternoon here at Nissan Stadium, the Music City Bowl, the Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl. We're broadcasting live. We'll have Austin Burlage of Power T-Tape. We're going to break down this matchup in more detail. Coming up next, Ron Slay, Austin Stanley of A to Z Sports. Going to be a lot of fun. We're happy to have you guys along for the ride, and if you want to jump in, you know the number. Austin Burlage coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back on this Vols game day, 104.5 The Zone. We're broadcasting live from the TransPerfect Music City Bowl here at Nissan Stadium. Tennessee taking on Purdue in what, under normal circumstances, probably would have been a super competitive game during the regular season. We got our buddy Austin Burlage, been with us all season long, breaking down the Power T tape. We got one more Tennessee game day to do. We're happy to have him along for the ride. What's happening, dude?
Hey, Bob. It's good to be here. It's good to meet you in person.
Yeah.
First time in Nashville in a while for me, so this is really cool.
8-hour drive from Wisconsin just to watch the Tennessee Vols play today and to break it down with us. I appreciate you making us a stop on your mid-state tour right now. I mean, but you got to be excited. Your pops is in town with you.
Dad's here.
It's a great opportunity to watch Tennessee capitalize on what's been a fantastic season for them so far.
Yeah, it's been great. The last time I made that 8-hour drive, it was for the Georgia State game in 2019. So we are hoping for a much different outcome today. But yeah, I think we'll get it too.
Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. Not today. So let's talk about this game because obviously, you and I were talking before we came on air about the number of Purdue players who are not going to be available for them. They've got a ton of talent on both sides of the ball, but they've had a lot of people who have opted out of this bowl. And what should make it a lot easier, certainly for Tennessee on offense, without George Karlaftis trying to get after the passer.
Yeah, he's a game wrecker. I reached out to a couple guys that I know in the business, I guess you could say, and that had played Purdue, and just asked, I know you can't tell me any of the inside information, but just tell me what it's like to play Purdue. And two of the things that popped up right away was David Bell's a freak and George Karlaftis is a freak, and you have to game plan around both of those guys. So for the fact that both of them are out, and that saves Tennessee some game planning stress there, and it should make operation a lot easier, both on the offensive and defensive ends today.
We've seen an offense, that it's been a while since Tennessee offense has looked like this, has been this kind of exciting. Josh Heupel, Hendon Hooker, Cedric Tillman, they're getting production from all over the place. And then, of course, Tyon Evans when he was available, and now that's a whole different situation. We don't need to dwell on the transfer portal today. But Hendon Hooker, I mean, we're gonna do awards basically. Most improved, offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year for Tennessee, and it's tough for me to not land on Hendon Hooker every time I talk about this offense and just what a world of difference it made when he was put into the lineup over Joe Milton.
Absolutely. It's hard to even imagine that he wasn't the guy to start the season. I mean, it feels so long ago, the Bowling Green game and then the Pitt game, and kind of wonder if he had started the Pitt game, maybe that's a win, and that's a ACC champion Pitt.
Yeah, it would be Tennessee's luck that they would pull the ACC champion
and
team.
Ole Miss from the cross division for the first time when they win 10 games for the first time ever in the regular season. But I digress. Yeah, I mean, Hendon has been what he's been able to do come in. It's really been the accuracy, because I think you saw earlier in the year just a lot of open routes. Guys were there, and we had overthrows and we had misses, and Hendon has come in and been really efficient, taking care of the football. I think he had 3 interceptions.
Right.
And today is going to be huge. I mean, Purdue likes to play a lot of one high coverages, whether that's man coverage or 3-deep zone or cover 3 or whatever you want to call it. So should have Cedric Tillman and some one-on-ones on the outside, and Purdue's starting corner Mackey is also out for today. And you got to like that matchup.
Yeah, I mean, for somebody, Austin Burlage of Power T Tape is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. We're live outside of Nissan Stadium, Music City Bowl taking place. Tennessee looking to take down Purdue and should be able to do so with relative ease. We'll see what the result looks like once we get inside the stadium. But, I mean, Hendon Hooker, he had the 3rd best passer rating in the country in college football, 182.15. We talked about the accuracy. We talked about the efficiency. As somebody who breaks down the film on a weekly basis, when you heard that he and Cedric Tillman were both going to return to Tennessee next year, how much more excited does it get you as somebody who breaks down this stuff on a regular basis to know that there's even room for improvement with this group and the new young talent that they're going to add through the recruiting classes?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, to have those guys coming back with just another year in the system, I think is huge. This is such a different system than anything these guys are used to operate at the pace that they've operated at. So the sky's the limit, I think, with what they can do. And I think Tennessee, knock on wood, but I think they have some luck, obviously, to pull LSU next year. But they have a new head coach and have to put in a whole new system. And, so I think they get some some benefit there. And to have those guys coming back, I think you feel really good about it.
Without Alontae Taylor today, obviously one of their best defensive players, if not their best defensive player, how much changes on defense? We know a little bit about the depth right now. We know that they've got some parts to work with in the secondary that have seen playing time throughout the course of the season, but he is such a unique talent and, probably would have played if he wasn't dealing with injury today.
Yeah, you would think.
How much changes without him in the lineup in the secondary?
I don't think a ton changes schematically. I think the thing that you just get is a skill set, right? So with Alontae, obviously really physical. That's one of the biggest traits of him when they evaluate him for the draft is, he likes to come up, fit the run, and he can be pretty physical on receivers. And I don't think Tennessee really has another guy like that that can kind of get in people's face, so to speak. But fortunately, their Purdue's top 2 wide receivers are out. So hopefully, schematically, it's not that different. What I will say about Purdue offensively that could give some problems is interestingly, all of their run plays have play action off of it, which isn't typical. But that's another tidbit I picked up from my sources, if you will.
Look at you.
Yeah.
We got an in the biz flex. We got a sources flex.
I dropped it.
Big J Journo, Austin Burlage. I like it.
But yeah, I mean, they said it's pretty unique, I guess you could say, to have so many like all of your play actions to be run plays. So you can't really look at one type of action and say, oh, well, that's going to be boot. Like you have to respect everything. And I think for the whole back 7, I'll include the linebackers in that as well. That's going to be what I'm most interested in to watch defensively today, even with Alontae out.
One of the most surprising players to me for that defense, outside of just the defense in general under Tim Banks, I thought he did an incredibly good job with not a lot of depth there, and certainly with the way that a lot of talent on both sides of the football for Tennessee this year opted to jump ship after Jeremy Pruitt was fired for cause. You look at Jeremy Banks with this linebacking core. I've been incredibly impressed with his ability. How big of an impact player has he been in this Tennessee defense?
Yeah, he's been huge. I wouldn't say a hater, but I'm definitely a guy that's been critical because of all the personal fouls that he's picked up and costing his team that way. You'd like to see those get a little bit fewer or further between.
A little more discipline.
But yeah, I mean, especially with the attrition at that position, not only from the portal, but we lost Mitchell earlier in the year to surgery. For him to step in and to be the tackling presence that he's been in the middle has been huge. Yeah, Tennessee doesn't jump out at you statistically when you look at some of the key metrics like scoring defense, red zone defense, things like that, third down. But they've been good enough, and I think a lot better than people thought when you saw all of the outgoing transfers and the new staff, and wondering how does that pair with this high-powered offense that's going to leave you on the field for like literally 2 games or something like that, longer than every other defense.
Austin Burlage is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. We're breaking down some Power T tape live at the Music City Bowl at Nissan Stadium. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in on the conversation. Purdue coach Jeff Brom, he was talking about, we spent some time on the missing wide receivers for them today. I want to hear from Coach Jeff Brom, who spoke on the opt-outs that they had at the position. Lucas, if we could pull that up. This was the Purdue head coach speaking about the opt-outs at that wide-out position earlier this week.
Well, fortunately for us, we do have a lot of receivers on our team, and we're down quite a few, but that's the nature of football. And whether it's the last bowl game or the first game of next year, new guys are going to have to emerge, and this will be a great environment to see how some of these guys respond. So we're looking forward to a few new faces being on the field, and we still want to try to do what we do best and get the ball to our playmakers and figure out a way to score points on offense and see if we can get a few stops on defense. So that's always the goal, is to just compete and game plan against a quality opponent and see if you can win. I know as far as a couple years ago, it was not a good day for us on the field. It was one of those games where you just like to wash away. But you know what? We learned a great deal. We played a tremendous Auburn team that had a lot of talent, a lot of size, a lot of guys that moved on to the National Football League, and we got exposed in many areas. So a lot of things we needed to work on and improve and understand. When you go against really, really high caliber quality opponents, you've got to figure out ways to get stops and get points and get an edge on special teams and win. So there are a lot of things we learned, and we hope to try to put on a better performance this year.
It's Purdue head coach Jeff Brom talking about the absence of the wide receivers and the last time they were here in Nashville when they got smoked by Auburn at Nissan Stadium. That was I was here for that game too. That was a brutal one.
That was bad. Yeah, that's right. I forgot. They didn't make a bowl. What was it, 2017?
That sounds right.
One of those two, and then they didn't make a bowl, and then obviously COVID last year, 18.
Thank you, Lucas.
So yeah, this is their first bowl back since that blowout. It's in the same stadium against another SEC team that likes to run you all across the field. So you gotta like that. Yeah, that's interesting from Brom talking about his wide receivers. Yeah, I just think with Bell out there's not really a ton of guys that really jump out and scare you. But I will say I think they do a good job of getting the tight ends involved in the RPO game and play action game. I think I might be more worried about that. I hope that doesn't become a bad omen, but that's what I'm.
What are you
at.
scared you're going to jinx them?
Yeah, I am. I'm at the end of the day, I'm a fan, and I drove 8 hours to watch the watch the orange and white, so I'm a little bit nervous.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I think there's and that is cautious optimism. We'll call it, from Austin Burlage of Power T Tape here with us on 104.5 The Zone. So you talk about the things that kind of scare you about this Purdue offense. If you were Tennessee, based on, the personnel that you understand that you do still have, Theo Jackson on the opposite side in your secondary, you understand the depth at defensive line that's actually turned out to be pretty solid for this defense this year. How would you what would your kind of coaching points be against a Purdue offense like this one?
Yeah, read your keys. That's the biggest thing. You have to respect what they're doing up front, because like we talked about with the play action game, the first time you think like, oh, I know this is going to be a run, I've seen this before, and you jump it, all of a sudden you have a tight end in behind you, and you're getting burned on it. So that would be the biggest thing I would stress, is you have to be really disciplined. Maybe some other teams you can get away with not being as disciplined, because you sort of know they're not as diverse in what they do. But yeah, that would be the biggest thing for me. Defensively, I think Tennessee has the talent, like you mentioned. I mean, Theo has been really, really good this year at that nickel position. I hesitate to call him most improved, because I know you were doing superlatives today, because he's always been pretty good, but he really, I felt, took a step this year in a role that was a little bit new for him. And Matthew Butler on the defensive line. So, I think Tennessee has the talent, especially with what Purdue has out, and I don't think they have a run game that really scares you. I don't think they're going to gash Tennessee on the ground like some other more powerful SEC opponents have.
Right.
So I would just be disciplined when you get into situations that are play pass situations. You have to just read your keys and respect it, react quickly, so you don't get burned over the top.
Austin Burlage at Austin_Burlage is where you find him for his breakdowns. All right, let's do some superlatives, because it is the last Vols game day of the season here in Nashville, a bowl game, the Music City Bowl, the TransPerfect Music City Bowl to be exact.
Don't forget the sponsor.
Listen, it's what keeps us on the air. Most improved player for the University of Tennessee Volunteers, according to Austin Burlage, this season has been who?
I'm going to say Cedric Tillman. And I don't think that it was because I think he's always had the talent, but he maybe got overshadowed in the past from guys like Jennings or Callaway, and he's been around, but he maybe hasn't got the shine. And this year it was, you're going to be the number one on the outside. We're going to put you in some situations. He's been awesome getting off press coverage, and when they've thrown it up to him, he's been able to go get it and put up the numbers. So he's the guy that really stands out to me as taking a big step this year, and really thankful we get him for another year.
I don't want to act like I'm mad at Joe Milton for how many touchdowns to Cedric Tillman could have been had on the season.
Yeah, you got robbed.
I'm not mad at him for that. I know that's unfair criticism, but that dude could have had a really special season, because he found ways, and this offense found ways to get him open, wide open down the field. The quarterback with the arm strength to get it there, it way past him. In a lot of situations. I just remember shaking my fist at the television at poor Joe Milton, because he's doing what Joe Milton does. He's bombing it down the field.
Yeah.
With Hendon Hooker, you have a little more efficiency in that passing game. The biggest surprise for these 2021 Vols, according to Austin Burlage, on this roster was?
Oh, wow. Biggest surprise. I think I'm going to say that it's probably just the defense as a whole. I think coming in, and maybe this is a cop-out, but I think I'll tie it into the record a little bit of being 7-5 and the potential for an 8-win season, which is the highest total that we've had since, that was the Jeremy Pruitt's highest total was 8 as well. So, and to do that with a team that you had so many guys leave, I think is impressive. But that defense, you just had so many guys, important guys leave, particularly Henry Toto in the middle. And you just wondered, are they going to be able to stay together, I get, for lack of a better phrase, against SEC teams for a whole 12-game schedule. I've just been really impressed with the job that Tim Banks has done. So I guess that was my biggest surprise, is just that they were able to do as well. I expected more games where, South Carolina, Missouri, they were complete blowouts. And I kind of expected, the offense is going to put up points, but I thought it'd be more like 49 to 35,
a little
42.
closer.
Yeah. So for the defense to be able to do what it's done, I think has been impressive.
I look at, I've got the Vols media guide in front of me. 50 different players for Tennessee made their debut this season. 50 different players, 23 freshmen.
And we probably only had like 70-some scholarship, right, at the start?
Right,
like
because of everything that's looming overhead at some point with this nebulous NCAA violation that it's allegedly going to come down probably 5 years after the fact, and then we'll all be able to get pissed off about it.
Yeah.
But, you talk about the credit to the defensive coaching staff, and Josh Heupel is one of this year's nominees for the Coach of the Year, the first-year coach award, the Steve Spurrier first-year coach award.
I don't know if I like that.
Yeah, does that hurt you a little bit?
A little bit. He is a funny guy. I'll give him that.
Just hear him chirping in the background if he, snidely hands the award to Josh Heupel.
A real smug look on his face. Yeah.
So you talk about South Carolina and the blowout that Tennessee got over South Carolina this year. Shane Beamer is one of the finalists. Josh Heupel at Tennessee, and then Gus Malzahn at UCF. Of that group, if you can be objective about this, is there a better case for one of these three coaches or one of these two coaches over Josh Heupel at Tennessee this season?
Yeah, even trying to be unbiased, I really don't think so. I know that South Carolina wasn't supposed to be 6-6. Like there was talk about them being even worse than we were supposed to be. So I know that media is in love with the job that Shane Beamer's done. I know his name came up as a candidate after just 1 year at Oklahoma because of his connection there, and people were so impressed.
I'm not going to lie. The press conference after Georgia, I was a fan. I was a fan of Shane Beamer in that moment.
He's a guy I'd like to hang out with for sure, but I don't think that he's done a better coaching job than Josh Heupel has done with this Tennessee team this year. It definitely has me excited for the future. I was apprehensive coming in because if you looked at him at UCF and you saw his record got worse each year that he was there, all 3 years, and there's some. I'm just being honest. Like there was some part of me about this offense that I was like, I knew we were going to score points, but points don't mean you're going to win.
No, I think there was some natural skepticism from everybody before you really saw how the tempo offense was going to develop, and once you got better quarterback play within the style of offense that you wanted to run. Again, these probably sound like shots at Joe Milton, but that's not the case. It's just a change needed to be made to continue the success or to try and build upon what they clearly had outlined. Because we all saw the plays there to be made. Yeah. It's just they were missing, game-changing plays against teams like Pittsburgh.
Right, and the talk going in was that Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton were kind of neck and neck. So I don't necessarily fault Heupel for choosing Milton because of the skill set and everything that he brought. It's just a shame that he couldn't put it together on the field, and a huge benefit that Hendon Hooker, when he was given the chance, was able to run with it.
Maybe I'm teeing you up in a way that I don't want to, but who was the biggest disappointment for the Vols this year?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this one.
I did not mean to lead that into the way that I think it's going to go.
I think you can make a case for Joe Milton. I'm going to say, and I love this guy, but I'm going to say Jalen Hyatt because he flashed so much as a freshman, and you thought, like, oh, with this tempo offense, and he can really fly, and you're gonna get him in the seam and be able to use that speed, and he just hasn't really been as much of a part of the offense. He really hasn't been much of a, you know what I mean?
A part of that makes me feel like there's some availability issues there. That's the most important thing. But there were obviously games that he was out there, and you would like to see more from a wide receiver who to be hugely talented. I think when you kind of looked at everything, whether you're reading like the Athlon preseason magazines
Right.
and everybody's citing like the X factor for this upcoming season
Right.
being Jalen Hyatt, maybe we gassed ourselves up unnecessarily and put unfair expectations, but like the talent was clearly there to add a different dimension to this offense that I think we would have expected to see.
Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to take a shot at him. I really like him. I think he can be
shots
a great
fired.
player.
It's the headline.
I hate that. I'm
all
that
about
superlative,
clickbait, Austin. Careful.
I know how we do things here at 104.5 The Zone. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think really highly of him. It's just hopefully he goes off today. But it's a shame that he didn't have a more productive year.
At Austin _Burlage is where you can find him. He breaks down the power T tape after every Vols game during the offseason. The man is ceaseless in his analysis, and we've been grateful to have him a part of our show for this entire Vols football season on this last game day. We appreciate I know you guys are excited to see the game. I hope you and your dad enjoy yourselves in the game. This is my first Vols game I'm going to attend. I've never gotten to cover a Vols game. I'm working on Sundays.
You are in for a treat, my friend.
I'm excited. Listen, the tailgate parking lots right now are rocking. I'm excited to see what the Vols fan base feels like in person because I've only ever seen it on TV. Enjoy the game.
Twitter, yeah. Thanks,
Twitter.
buddy. Thanks, buddy.
I've been on Vol Twitter.
I really
before.
do appreciate it.
All right, when we come back, Austin Stanley of A Sports is here. Lucas Panzica has his end-of-year superlatives. We're going to be doing that all day long here on 104.5 The Zone. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. Who was your most improved player for Tennessee this year? The biggest surprise, disappointment, offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year. We're going to be talking about it all day long. Great guests ahead and your phone calls as well. I'm Buck Reising, live at Nissan Stadium here on 104.5 The Zone. Guys know. Welcome back here on 104.5 The Zone. Buck Reising live with you from Nissan Stadium. Vols and Purdue taking place in the Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl today. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. We're doing superlatives. This is the last Vols game day of the season. It sucks. It's been a lot of fun to watch kind of the progress that they've made, and now to be able to try and finish it off, finish strong with a win over Purdue today. That's the objective. Lucas just whispered in my ear that we got a little bit of breaking news. Buddy, what you got for me?
This is from Lauren Brownlow of 99.9 in Raleigh, North Carolina. Sources tell her that the mayonnaise dump on the winning head coach after the Mayo Bowl will be after the trophy ceremony, and it will be 4.5 gallons of Duke's mayonnaise, slightly watered down.
Slightly watered down mayonnaise.
Yes, slightly watered down. Very important to the report.
So the Duke's Mayo Bowl is on right now. As a matter of fact, I should put that up on my iPad while we're out here doing the pregame at Nissan Stadium.
South Carolina with the early lead.
4.5. Yeah, let's okay, play-by-play expert. Why don't you set the scene for people listening on the radio and hanging out here at Nissan Stadium, because we don't have TVs on the outside of the stadium. I know people are very, very invested in the Duke's Mayo Bowl today.
Well, they're winning 7-0 at the very prestigious Duke's Mayo Bowl. So this would be that conversation about the first-year head coach award between Beamer and Heupel.
This makes a difference today.
Yeah,
for Beamer.
It should, right? I mean, if South Carolina is able to beat a preseason top 10 North Carolina team in the prestigious Duke's Mayo Bowl and Tennessee falls to Purdue or vice versa, then you have your answer right there.
Why are you insisting on saying prestigious every time you say Duke's Mayo Bowl?
I just love the Mayo Bowl so much. Did you see in the press box that they gave one jar of Duke's Mayo to every media member sitting at their spot on the console?
No, dog. I only saw the pregame press box waffle bar that the Duke's Mayo Bowl had set up for the media. I had many people send me that tweet today.
Who's going to be the first to put mayo on a waffle?
I mean, Mike Golick Jr. is calling the game, right, our buddy?
Yeah.
It's 1,000% going to be Golick Jr.
That is
if
such
it's
a
not,
good
that's
fit.
an upset.
That's such a good fit of a bowl game for Mike to call.
Oh, yeah. No, he's perfect. And, he's already tweeted out his picture of the waffle setup. I'm sad that the Duke's Mayo Bowl went first today because I'm scared to walk into Nissan Stadium and have just high expectations to no avail. But the game itself, that's probably going to live up to expectation for Tennessee. And we're doing end-of-year superlatives. We're going to do it with all of our guests today. We got Austin Stanley of A to Z Sports. They got their setup out here as well. We're doing a bit of a tailgate together today. So a lot of Vols fans, a lot of orange out in the tailgate parking lots at Nissan Stadium. It's going to be a packed house to see Tennessee take on Purdue. Austin Stanley, Ron Slay is going to be here. He's going to be going nuts. I don't know if Slay's been tailgating before this, but I know that Nissan Stadium, how's it go, Lucas? Got no roof? Is that what's happening today?
Believe that's what he says.
Doesn't hit the same when I do it. So we'll have Slay to hype people up before this game gets going. Lucas, I feel like you're decked out in your orange today for people watching us on Zone TV, YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and Twitch. Lucas is back in the studio, and we're out here live at Nissan Stadium until Vol Network takes over. But, I mean, you have been as invested in this Tennessee season as anybody I know. You are an alumni of the University of Tennessee. You have suffered many disappointing expectations, and I feel like you're less jaded than you've ever been. Am I correct in my assessment?
Yeah, sure. I'll take that. I'll take that analysis. I mean, look, if this team's able to finish with 8 wins on the season, it's obviously blown away any preseason expectations of Josh Heupel. And when you talk about season superlatives, a lot of the reasons are right there. My most improved player is Jeremy Banks. I know Austin brought up Cedric Tillman, and that's a good shout for a 2-star out of Las Vegas. But Jeremy Banks has kind of become a rock for this defense to build around. And he mentioned the frustrations Tennessee fans have with Banks and some of the bonehead penalties, the discipline. That hasn't been that big of an issue this year. And he's a guy that if he's a step late on a quarterback on the sideline, gets flagged for a late hit, which has happened a couple of times this season. People are quick to sort of roll their eyes, say, here we go again. But
he's an easy target.
Exactly. But he hasn't.
It's like Taylor Lewan with unnecessary roughness penalties at the start of his career.
Right.
Like, that's what I feel like I watch when I watch Jeremy Banks.
Lewan with any penalties, right? But
it's a big old target.
It just hasn't been that big of an issue issue with Banks this year. I think you do have to give him credit. He led the team in tackles with 108, 9 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks on the year, all career highs. And he's coming back for his 5th year in 2022, where I really think he can, and that's kind of a weak spot, I think, of this defense in the middle there at linebacker, but he's a guy that you can build around and keep the same mentality that's really benefited this defense.
108 tackles this season by the junior linebacker, Jeremy Banks. Team leader in tackles. He was 3rd in the SEC and 24th in all of FBS college football. Tied for the team lead in tackles for loss this season with 9. Jeremy Banks has been an incredibly improved player. And ever since he was a running back, right, we just knew that he liked to hit people. Now that he's kind of fine-tuned the position, his skill set at the position, I think you've seen a lot of growth, and it's benefited Tim Banks' defense. One of the, if you're talking about most improved, or maybe even biggest surprise, Lucas, I don't know where you would go next with that superlative, but this Vols defense, there's a lot of reasons why it looks the way that it does and kind of exceeded what we thought it may be.
Yeah, that's what I had too. And they're closing in on a record here for school record in a single season of TFLs. The record's 100. It was set in 2016. They've got 94 at the moment. So they'd really have to wreak havoc in the Purdue backfield to break that record today. Another record they could break, 18 points away from the single season scoring record. So 3 touchdowns in Tennessee sets a new mark there in year 1 of Josh Heupel. But, yeah, I think biggest surprise, you have to say the defense. They talked about the aggressive mentality, needing to play offense on defense to try and supplement this fast-paced offense on Josh Heupel's side, and they've lived up to it. Tim Banks has really done a nice job.
How triggered did you and probably every Vol fan listening to this radio show today, how triggered did you get when you saw Tim Banks' name start getting floated for head coaching jobs?
Yeah, no, Tennessee benefits from having him back. John Bryce was the first I heard say it on Blaine and Mickey a few weeks ago, brought his name up for the Duke job, potentially. If he does a good job again next season with this Tennessee defense, I think you'd expect him to be gone to get a head coaching gig.
That's where you want to be, though, right? Where
Absolutely.
People value your coordinators. That's kind of the thing that here locally it's been with the Titans. It's been a while since there's been kind of a Tennessee coaching tree for people to kind of build off of. And this coaching staff, I think, all the way around has exceeded a lot of expectations. Josh Heupel is the 5th Tennessee coach in the last 70 years to lead the Vols to a bowl berth in his debut season. Bill Battle, Phil Fulmer, Lane Kiffin, and Derek Dooley. So the results get a little mixed after the first 2. But so Josh Heupel.
Hey, Dooley was the Music City Bowl, by the way. I was at that game.
No, I know. We saw Zach Reagan, our buddy at A to Z. He was tweeting out highlights from the Derek Dooley Bowl in that weird one over North Carolina. I was laughing out loud. I texted that to you. It seemed to bother you deeply to watch how that
struck
game
a nerve. Yeah.
To rewatch how that game ended, because that's the origination of the 10-second runoff in college football, right?
They literally created a rule because of that game, because the too many men on the field benefited North Carolina, and they had the 5-yard penalty, but they were allowed to re-kick and send the game to overtime when they eventually won.
I saw a lot of people just shiver a little bit when we brought up that Derek Dooley Music City Bowl. It's okay. Tennessee's in a better place right now.
By the way, on the way out, biggest disappointment of the year, because Offensive Player of the Year has to be Hendon Hooker. I don't think it's close. I think
save it. You're firing all your awards off right now. We've got 2 hours of radio.
You want me to save my biggest disappointment of the year?
I think that's worth a tease.
Fair enough.
All right, we'll do that coming up next. Austin Stanley, he's not a disappointment. A to Z Sports, he will join us on the other side. We're out here live at Nissan Stadium, Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl between Tennessee and the Purdue Boilermakers today. Kickoff will be later right here on 104.5 The Zone. We're your home for Vols football here in Nashville. I'm Buck Reising. We'll talk biggest disappointment from Lucas Panzica, and we'll have Austin Stanley join us as well coming up next.
It is 11 a.m. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. It's game day in Nashville. The TransPerfect Music City Bowl kicks off at 2 p.m. today at Nissan Stadium between Tennessee and Purdue. The Buck Reising Show is live at Nissan Stadium until 12:30. That's when Vol Network coverage will pick up right here on The Zone. Tennessee basketball started SEC play last night without Kennedy Chandler and John Fulkerson, both out due to COVID protocol in a 73-68 loss at Alabama. Olivier Cumwa led with 15 points and 9 rebounds. It drops Tennessee to 9-3. The Preds resumed play at the Capitals last night, trailed 3-0 before coming back to tie it up. Eventually fell 5-3. That snaps a 7-game win streak for the Predators. They are at the Blue Jackets tonight. Puck drops at 6 p.m. Titans return to the practice field Wednesday in preparation for the final home game of the regular season against Miami. The only non-participant, offensive lineman Corey Levin, out with an illness. Taylor Lewan was activated off the COVID list, and linebacker David Long made a return to practice. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hour number 2 on this Vols game day, live here at Nissan Stadium. Welcome in. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock on 104.5 The Zone. A lot of Vols fans lining up, but we do have some breaking news on this before we get back into the game breakdown. Austin Stanley of A Sports is here with us as well. Christian, one of our guys out here working the game day setup, has just informed me that they have canceled the Vol Walk due to a miscommunication, apparently according to the police officers who are trying to orchestrate this thing. The team is just going to walk from the bus to the tunnel, so no Vol Walk today, according to, I want to get the reporter's name right, Angela Moran, looks like from a TV station in Chattanooga, who is here covering the game. Austin Stanley of A Sports joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. I hate to start your portion of today's show with bad news.
Disappointment all around, right, Buck? What's going on?
Not much. We're just hanging out here. We're pre-gaming this game. And listen, there's been a lot of different issues with bowl games across the spectrum in college football right now. This doesn't necessarily sound like a similar instance. This just sounds like an instance of miscommunication about the logistics of this setup. But I mean, you want all the pomp and circumstance that comes with a bowl game.
Yeah,
if you're a
but
Vols
at
fan.
this point, just play the game.
Play the game.
They canceled for precautionary purposes the welcome party earlier this week. Battle of Bands didn't happen last night because of weather. Fine, no Vol Walk. Okay, that's disappointing because of the reason, but just play the game because it'll be fun to see if Tennessee can get its 8th win of the season with this offense, score some points. Huge crowd today. I mean, there is so much orange around here.
It's crazy. It's not crazy. This is what you expect from a Tennessee fan base with expectations.
I expected it at like now or noon, but when I pulled in right at 10 o'clock, it was everywhere. Awesome.
Yeah, there have been people out there tailgating for a long time.
Oh, yes.
It's going to be.
Oh, yeah. I saw a lot of empty beer cans at 10 o'clock.
There's a lot of empty beer cans. Ron Slay may show up with a bunch of empty beer cans. He's going to be here at noon. I think he's been out there tailgating this Vols Music City Bowl today as well. And, we talk about we're going to do season superlatives with Austin. We're going to do it all day long. 615-737-1045 if you want to jump in on the show today with some expectations. Brett Doherty and family have just walked up, getting ready for a little Music City Bowl magic, getting things started. What are you most excited to see today?
I want to see if they can just dominate another Big Ten team in a bowl game. We've seen the Iowa, the Northwestern, the Nebraska dominations during Butch Jones. Jeremy Pruitt didn't dominate your Hoosiers, but they beat your Hoosiers.
Yeah, there's that.
And so, is it Vols beating up in the Big Ten again? That's kind of what I'm looking forward to seeing. I like the fact that so many Tennessee key players are playing today instead of seeing opt-outs for many different reasons for Purdue players. Top 2 wide receivers out, best pass rusher out, best O-lineman out, best corner out. Alontae Taylor's the only guy, and I guess Cade Mays too. But those two guys, I mean, very important to this team. But the core of this team's coming back, and so now you get an opportunity to see what this could look like next year. With the schedule, it looks pretty favorable. It's a good time to catch LSU with Brian Kelly.
No kidding.
Right? So can this be a foundation that you're building towards next season to see what Josh Heupel can do with Hendon Hooker being the guy for the next 9 months going into what next fall can be?
Nothing makes me want to see Tennessee win more today than them playing Purdue. Nothing in the world. I cannot stand Purdue football. This is deeply ingrained in my soul. There's a lot of Purdue fans because Nashville's a fun place to come. And
sure.
Purdue fans, they've had bad experiences in Music City Bowls before. I thought their last face-off against Auburn that might ward a few of them off this time around.
Yeah, but New Year's in Nashville's pretty solid, so why not?
Yeah,
better than New Year's wherever they're at Purdue. Right?
Yeah, no, I've been to West Lafayette a time or two. So we're doing end of season awards. This is the last Vols game day, and we're happy to be out here live at Nissan Stadium broadcasting. Most improved Tennessee volunteer player, according to Austin Stanley of A to Z Sports, is whom this season?
A guy I've been hard on for the last 2 or 3 years. Prove me wrong, Jeremy Banks. I think Jeremy Banks has had a fantastic year. And early in that, I remember it was the game against Pitt. I was thinking Josh Heupel had 2 goals. Find a quarterback and find somebody to replace Jeremy Banks at inside linebacker. Well, he did both, but the guy was actually Jeremy Banks to just get his head on straight, stop having penalties. And I think Jeremy Banks is showing that he is a talented guy, and he's finally learned how to play the linebacker position, keep himself in control, play within the whistles, don't do anything else stupid, and he's become a really good player, and I think he's got a future potentially on Sundays if he, has another solid season.
That's a much different conversation than we were having about Jeremy Banks not so long ago.
3 months ago, after he had a block in the back penalty on a field goal return for a touchdown that wiped that off against Pitt, and you're thinking, how does this guy have a 15-yard penalty every game? And he's been great.
He has been. There's no question about it.
Legitimately great.
No, and listen, I think there are so many things about. And I want to make sure that I'm measuring this relative to what the expectation was at the start of the season, right? Because I feel like Vols fans understood that they were going to come into this year with Josh Heupel, with this kind of offense that you've seen work in different places. They were going to score a lot of points, but probably going to be in a lot of track meets, right? Because you did not expect Tim Banks and this defense to perform the way that they have. Jeremy Banks' success, I think, is a lot due to his own development at the position, but I've also been incredibly impressed with the depth that they have along that defensive line that's made it a lot easier for Jeremy Banks to play behind them.
Oh, Butler, Thomas. I mean, there's a lot of guys up there that are, they lead the country in tackles for loss. I think that kind of gets forgotten, but I don't think anybody expected this defense to be this disruptive. And Tim Banks, when he was hired as defensive coordinator, he mentioned that he wanted to be an aggressive, take the ball away, forcing turnovers, and they lived up to it, because they are able to get offenses in 3rd and long situations to get off the field. Sure, do they give up more points than you would like? Yeah, but the defense is out there for a lot more extra possessions because of what the offense is doing. And so I think this defense, it's been a massive success. They've got depth up front. It's can they replace a lot of the senior production in the secondary next season with guys like Flowers and Jackson and Taylor all going out the door.
This is the second best season that Tennessee has ever had as far as team tackles for loss. 2016 is the program record with 100 tackles for loss. 2021, this year, 94 tackles for loss. 1996,
and
83.
And 2016, is that what you said?
Yep.
That was when they finished that season right here in the Music City Bowl. And Derek Barnett, in this game, had a sack that broke Reggie White's career sack record at Tennessee in this game. So 2 pretty good defenses, and that one had more star power. This one has a lot more just guys out there getting it done.
Lucas, you want to get a little nostalgic? I'm pretty sure we have that Derek Barnett record-breaking call in the Music City Bowl for people, the ESPN call. You want to get a little nostalgic right now? All right. Lucas just whispered into my ear.
Come on, Lucas. I set you up for that one.
No.
I didn't even know it was there.
He didn't set you up at all. I've just betrayed Lucas. Every time I put Lucas in one of those spots, it's never his fault. It's always mine because I don't tell him what I want to do when we're roaming in and out of these segments. But we're out here at Nissan Stadium today. A lot of orange. In fact, Tennessee football has just tweeted out, paint Nissan orange, and it looks like that is indeed going to be the case today. If you're just now joining us, by the way, though, that has been announced that the Vol Walk has been canceled. I know that's disappointing for a lot of people who are making their way in from the tailgate parking lots right now. I just saw somebody do a complete 180 and walk back right back to the tailgate field.
Is that Homer Simpson?
Respect for you, sir. Yeah, just sink back into the bushes. Sink back into the bushes. Biggest surprise for this Vols team this year, according to Austin Stanley.
Oh, man. Cedric Tillman being a complete stud. I didn't expect that. I like Velus Jones Jr. I thought he would be a star wide receiver. I thought Jalen Hyatt would have more production than what he's had. I didn't expect Cedric Tillman to do this.
I don't think Cedric Tillman probably didn't expect to do this. I mean,
No.
you go into these games with that kind of mentality, but I mean, to think about the season, we talked about this earlier with Austin Burlage, the success he could have had the quarterback situation been different at the start of the year. A lot of missed opportunities in the direction, maybe 10 yards, 15 yards in front of Cedric Tillman this year.
How many touchdowns should Tillman have had?
I stopped counting because it made me sad
15
for him.
probably.
He probably would have gone to the NFL if he'd have finished the year with 15
that's true. So
touchdowns.
good thing that Joe Milton has a rocket arm with no accuracy because Tillman would be gone.
Yeah, that was a frustrating thing to start the season. But it's in a much different place now. When we come back, we're going to talk about Hendon Hooker. There's a really, really good article written in The Athletic by David Ubben about Hendon Hooker and the process that brought him and Josh Heupel back together after Heupel had recruited him at UCF. We'll do that coming up next. We've got end-of-year superlatives for this Vols football team as well. We're live outside of Nissan Stadium at the Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl. Vols and Purdue squaring off later today. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. That feels like game day. Welcome back on 104.5 The Zone, live from Nissan Stadium. Buck Reising here with you, Austin Stanley of A to Z Sports, hanging out with us this hour. Your phone calls as well, 615-737-1045, as we get you ready for kickoff between the Vols and Purdue at the TransPerfect Music City Bowl. Now, if you missed the news, we're going to update you on this regularly for people coming in and out. This is according to Angela Moran in Chattanooga, one of the television stations there. Bad news, Vols fans. The Vol Walk has been canceled. Police officers tell me there was a miscommunication, and the team will now just walk from the bus to the tunnel. Was planned to be at the secured corner of South 2nd and Russell Street. That is no longer happening, according to Angela Moran, and there's a lot of other news sources coming out with that as well. So if you're making your way over there, I understand your disappointment. I'm sure a lot of Vols fans were excited for the Vol Walk today. Get a little more in the bowl game spirit. But at this point, seems like there was a little bit of a logistical issue. Austin Stanley of A to Z Sports is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. So Hendon Hooker, Austin, I don't know if you had a chance to read that article about his background and how he came to be to Tennessee and kind of the backstory with him and Josh Heupel, how Heupel had recruited him prior to both of them landing in East Tennessee and Knoxville this season. And, I mean, just how impressive has he been to you, his performance, understanding the way that the season started to where we kind of look at him now with the third best passer rating in all of college football?
Well, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but who is better than him returning to the SEC at quarterback next year?
Oh, man. I would have to go back through the transfer portal.
The Heisman Trophy winner,
Bryce Young is a good answer.
After that,
Bryce Young's a good answer.
After that, there's not really anybody.
Not really anybody. Well, the transfer portal has certainly kind of affected what the SEC quarterback situation is going to look like next year, and it may well be resolved. It may be better based on how this has basically turned into free agency. I mean, Miles Brennan, I believe, went back to LSU, but that's not anything that's going to scare you as far as quarterback. We're talking about a legitimate Heisman candidate next year if they play this thing correctly.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that, but you did, so that's fine.
I feel like I can do that.
Yeah, no, it's better if it comes from you. Because I have a diploma from this university, so it doesn't mean as much.
What are you scared I'm going to paint you as a homer?
No, I'm just saying it means more coming from somebody who has zero ties. Does it not?
I mean, I'm not going to say that my opinion is more important than anybody's in this particular situation.
That opinion about Hendon Hooker means more coming from you, who has zero ties to the university.
I mean, listen, because when my evaluation of Hendon Hooker, basically I run it through NFL people that I talk to.
Sure, right.
So with the scouts that have evaluated these skill position players, this quarterback for Tennessee's offense this year, the conversation around why Hendon Hooker was even considering going into this quarterback draft class, one, because it's incredibly weak at the quarterback position, and there is a good chance that the way that he performed was good enough to get him in maybe a day 3 draft pick, right? Probably a fair estimation of where he is right now.
I would agree.
And you talk to some scouts about this, and basically he wasn't promised to retain the starting job as the quarterback for the University of Tennessee by Josh Heupel, which, by the way, I think is the absolute correct decision. You be honest and upfront with somebody who you have done well in your relationship with to trust and to create kind of this chemistry that you see between the offensive play caller, the head coach, and the quarterback. But basically, he wasn't promised his starting position back, and he decided he was going to come back and try and earn it over some of these talented recruits that they have brought in, and as well as the quarterback competition, which still seems kind of interesting next year.
Yeah, Jackson, the true freshman coming in. Navy Schuler is also coming in from App State transfer.
Yeah.
So, it's good because now Hendon Hooker knows that he has to continue to work in the offseason to keep this job, to keep the trajectory that he's on. And I do think it could have some Heisman candidate potential, next season. I think that would be huge.
Do you think that surprises Vols fans who are listening to this to say, why would he not be promised the starting quarterback position?
I do, because he didn't start the season as a starting quarterback, and Vol fans are probably wondering, what would it be like if he did start the Pitt game?
Yeah, but you can't do the analysis that way.
But that's how. But
you can't do the analysis
I don't disagree, but that's human nature, is to say, well, man, if he would have started the Pitt game, they could have won that game because they only lost by 7.
Buddy,
how many points did Joe Milton leave on the.
That's what I'm saying. There was like 21 points in the first quarter.
They should have been up by 3 touchdowns before the first quarter was halfway over.
I'm trying to think of what's made me more upset watching a Tennessee football game. The Arkansas game with Jeremy Pruitt last season, with the way that they blew that at halftime.
Oh my gosh!
I was
because you were doing our post-game show
with Jonathan Crompton. And I remember getting on there with Jonathan Crompton and looking at him and being like, what the hell did I just watch? And outside of that Pitt game felt exactly like that, because I'm like, oh my God, there's 21 points on the board. There's 21 points sitting right there. We've got 3 touchdown lead right there. And it just goes 15 yards over the head of Cedric Tillman, and I wanted to cry. I wanted to cry for Cedric Tillman. Lucas, what you got for me back there?
Hendon Hooker probably also doesn't run out of bounds with zeros on the clock with one play left against Ole Miss.
Yeah.
What? The end of that game. Lucas, you left early from that game. I think you're the only one. Austin, did you go?
No, I was in the Kentucky mountains in a cabin watching on my iPad from a hot tub.
Okay. Well,
Serenity.
All right. A little more.
It was a great experience until it wasn't.
Imagine just having your zen just crushed by, Lane Kiffin taunting you and mustard bottles on the field and Joe Milton's running out of bounds with 0. That's one of the most inexplicable football plays I've ever seen in my life. I did not want this to turn into Joe Milton shouldn't have been the start of this year's conversation. I didn't want to do this.
Okay, so let's get it back on the rails.
All right.
So Hendon Hooker not being promised a starting job,
yes.
Good thing for Tennessee fans.
Yes.
Because good thing for Hendon Hooker to keep working, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. And this is basically what they can show, certainly people in Middle Tennessee, because the best part about Nashville and what Nashville is becoming, I know not a lot of Nashville natives love the growth and the amount of people that are coming in and invading their city on a regular basis. What is it, 80 to 100 people a day move here?
Yeah.
But the thing that you get as the population grows, and this is going to be a slow burn, right? The way that it felt like, you've seen major markets turn into, with the amount of population density in Middle Tennessee that is changing, with the amount of talent that is going to continue to pop up here as far as high school football is concerned. There is a lot of talent here now. And we understand why Tennessee wasn't able to capitalize on that in recruiting this season, with everything that hung over Josh Heupel's head and the program's head at the start of the year. But to be able to put on a show, make a statement in front of, the state capitol, in front of, almost entirely 70,000 Vols fans today at Nissan Stadium. I expect this thing to be packed.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be.
This is a massive statement game, a massive opportunity for them to basically remind people, hey, we're the biggest, we're the best, and we're the most fun. Come play for us.
Vols are back. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, look at that. We got people hype about that. Got people hype about that. You want me to say Vols are back?
I thought that's what you're leading to. I thought you're going full Fulmer.
My God, is that peer pressure? Vols are back. What's the line? Vols are back, and we're going to get a piece of everybody's ass. Isn't that right?
Nailed it.
Phil Fulmer. I think it hits a little different from me than it does from Phil Fulmer.
Yes,
but
right.
we'll go ahead and take it off him anyway. Austin Stanley of A to Z Sports.
There you go.
Yeah, there it is. Turn it up, Lucas.
And before long, we'll be taking a bite out of everybody we play's ass. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Phil Fulmer. We appreciate your time as always. 615-737-1045.
Congrats on your severance.
Man, listen, he looked pretty happy at that recruiting dinner with Peyton Manning and everybody else. So Josh Heupel had that done up to the nines.
Yeah, why wouldn't he be happy?
Yeah.
He's not having to do anything, getting paid a lot of money.
He got out of there real quick before things got hot. So at this point, you look at, we're going through the end-of-year superlatives. Lucas still has his biggest disappointment. Let's do that, Lucas. Who is your biggest disappointment from this season before we get Austin Stanley? We've still got Offensive Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year to go.
I think it's how things ended with Tyon Evans.
And that sucks, doesn't it?
600 yards, over 600 total yards when you factor in receiving yardage, 7 total touchdowns, averaged over 6 yards per carry. After the first half of the season, he just could not get that ankle healthy. It felt so touch and go the rest of the way. And then he enters the transfer portal kind of unexpectedly. He's going to be at Louisville. I just felt like that was a guy that he's a really talented player. And it would have been fun to see what he could do in this offense next year alongside Jabari Small with another year in the system and a really good 4-star prospect coming in at Justin Williams as a freshman. For me, it's how that all kind of transpired, both with his injuries, nagging ankle injury throughout the back half of the year, and entering the transfer portal, ultimately leaving the program.
You know, I wish we would have talked to Adam Sparks about that earlier this week, about if he's heard anything about how that ended. That's so inexplicable to me.
So from what I understand, because there were rumors about it being academic related, that he would not be eligible, but that was not the case from what we can tell. So at least putting that out there, that it was not academic related, I think it's fair to Tyon Evans.
Yeah, well, and then it also leaves out the part of Tyon Evans' perspective. He's not been vocal about this at all, other than his statement thanking Vols fans and thanking the program for giving him his opportunity. Now, it helps that their recruiting class looks the way that it does with the running back situation right now. And I think that, you would have liked to see, though, them build upon it in the same way that they're going to be able to return Hendon Hooker, in the same way that they're going to be able to bring back Cedric Tillman. I guess you don't want to see them leave anything on the table when it's just starting to get good.
Yeah, I agree with Lucas. It was so weird. I remember being on Twitter when that happened. I was like, what? Like, why?
I feel like it was in the middle of an NFL Sunday. Like, it happened at a weird time.
It did. And I was just thinking, like, the guy was averaging 100 yards a game when he was playing.
Yeah.
It didn't make much sense, but who knows? People have things going on that you don't know about. So maybe he had some type of reason to need to move out of Knoxville for whatever reason it might be.
Would that be your biggest disappointment of the season?
I mean, now that Lucas is saying, I can't think of anything else that it would be. I mean, you beat Kentucky, you swept the bottom of the SEC East, which is what you wanted to do. Look, in retrospect, which I know you can't do the analysis this way, Buck, but losing to Florida.
Oh God!
Oh, okay. I'll go. There it is.
It's not even just losing to Florida. It's losing to Dan Mullen.
It's how it happened, right? What happens if Jimmy catches that pass on 4th down, because it looked like he was going to score? So that, in retrospect, biggest disappointment is losing to Florida. How you did? That's because you had them on the ropes
without question. Especially seeing how Florida's season. I mean, it really felt like it crumbled after Georgia. Like at that time, Florida was coming off the game where they'd held Alabama to a tight one. At the time, we had questions about Alabama, which seems completely foolish at this point. The idea that Nick Saban was getting 6 points in an SEC championship game, because we all tricked ourselves basically into thinking that there may be some kind of crack in the armor. But I mean, the Florida game, I think by far and away, and especially because it felt like Florida games of years past. Now, they won every game that they were favored in. They lost every game that they weren't. And so you kind of look at the expectations based on that. You say, all right, that's fair. It's fair what they were able to do. And at the time, we were kind of thinking, all right, here's how Tennessee can keep it close with Florida, not what they turned into at the end of the season, because they are an outright mess right now.
Yeah, we were talking about, can they cover?
Yeah.
And they didn't.
They did not
because
cover.
It had unraveled kind of similarly to how the Alabama game unraveled, where it was close until it wasn't, and then it was very far distance between the two scores at the end. But, yeah, losing to Florida, because you have to win that game next year. You have to.
So if you're not here at Nissan Stadium, and there's a lot of Vols fans that are, if you're not here at Nissan Stadium, we've got some really cool things going on at A to Z Sports for people to be able to watch this game today with our buddy, Jonathan Crompton. He's hosting a live stream watch party, is he not?
Yeah, so all season long, Jonathan Crompton, former Vols quarterback, and Charlie Burris, who did a lot of work on Knoxville radio with Jason Swain back in the day, but Charlie and Crompton have been doing halftime and post-game shows on the A to Z Sports platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Live, and so now they've been bugging me. They're like, we want to do a whole live stream. I was like, the whole game? And they're like, yeah. I was like, Josh Heupel games go like 4 hours, right? They're like, yeah, we want to do it. So they're going to.
It's the only problem I have with Josh Heupel is how long these games last.
So they're going to do it, and so they're going to be going live on the A to Z Sports YouTube, A to Z Sports Facebook page, and Twitch right before kickoff. And I find this fascinating because I want to sit there with Crompton, a former quarterback, watching how he watches a game.
The way he texts me during the game, he gives me anxiety.
Yes, and then Charlie's an emotional roller coaster. And so you've got the former quarterback with his analysis and how he watches an offense and game plan, because Crompton's coached in his past in the CFL. He played in the NFL and the CFL for some stints, and so he's a really smart football mind. Watching him watch Heupel work and then watching Charlie's emotions be all over the place. I think it'll be really fun. So then at halftime, our buddy Alan Bell is going to jump on with him to basically, hey, how can we make some money in the second half? So Alan Bell is going to give us, going to feed that there at halftime. And then in the second half, new Vols quarterback Navy Schuler is actually going to jump on the live stream.
Very exciting.
And so the connection there is Navy has been training with Crompton for the last 6 weeks or so since he announced his transfer from App State.
Yeah.
And so there's a good relationship there with Navy Schuler. And so he's going to come on the second half, talk about his process, his recruitment, and why he chose Tennessee and what that might feel like. So I'm pretty pumped to see how it's going to go. So again, A to Z Sports YouTube page and A to Z Sports Facebook with Charlie Burris and Jonathan Crompton. They will start 5 minutes before kickoff and go for, 4.5 hours. So we'll see how they have it. I don't know exactly how they're going to do bathroom breaks. Maybe I don't know if they've
They're going to dehydrate themselves. I don't know like Scott Hansen.
Yeah,
on
I was
going to
ask. I was like, they DM Scott Hansen to see if they can get any tips. But no, it'll be a lot of fun.
So the last time we saw this Tennessee team play a football game, rivalry week, which I maintain is the hardest phrase to say in all of sports, makes me nervous.
Add
every
Red
time.
River before it.
Red River rivalry.
Yes.
I have to slow myself down very, very much. Vanderbilt was the game, the last team that we saw Tennessee play. Tennessee winning 45-21. And, I don't think there's any misconceptions about what Josh Heupel's offense is and has been this season and how much of it is really based off the run. Like, I think people, see the wide-open touchdowns to Cedric Tillman. You see the gaudy numbers in the passing game. But how much of it is predicated off their ability to efficiently run the football? And we saw them do that against Vanderbilt. How much can we expect them to do that again today against a Purdue team that we understand is missing, a first-round pick on the defensive line and a lot of other players who have opted out of this team as well today?
Yeah, it'll be interesting because there's no Cade Mays, and so how does Tennessee fill in that tackle spot, and how effective can they be?
They've had to do that a couple times with the offensive line this year.
And how healthy are they? Because we've seen that offensive line kind of be like the Titans' offensive line and just be hobbled for just trying to get through games a lot of times. But I think Tennessee, especially the young running backs behind Jabari Small, how have they been able to use the bowl practice time to get up to speed, to get more load share of the carries and see how they operate? And then how many shot plays can they take off of play action, because Purdue's also without its best cornerback. And so now you've got Velus Jones Jr., who I'm guessing wants to have a big going away party today, and Cedric Tillman, who wants to build on next year, and all the other weapons too. So, I'm expecting points. I don't know if I'm expecting Missouri, South Carolina type output.
Man, I still can't get over that Missouri game.
I was
I knew their defense was bad, but watching that game back, I did a couple times. I had a DVR'd. I could not believe that the defense locked down the Missouri running back the way that they did, and to see Josh Heupel's team run it up on Mizzou that way. And help me understand. Maybe this is a question for another day, but I do not understand how Missouri football gets the kind of recruiting classes that they do. Perplexes me.
Drinkwitz has a interesting charisma about him that I don't get. I don't understand it, but apparently it's working.
Well, I think he hated Dan Mullen as much as Vols fans do. So he's got that going for him.
Yes, common interest.
615-737-1045. All right, let's get the offensive and defensive player of the year from Austin Stanley before we get him out of here. Again, A to Z Sports is where you can watch the live stream coverage of the Music City Bowl today with Charlie Burris, former Vols quarterback Jonathan Crompton, Alan Bell of CBS Sportsline, going to be giving you some second-half gambling tips. It's going to be a full live-streamed extravaganza, going to be really good if you don't have a chance to go to the game.
Yeah, quick thing on that. We also have a promo that could give you free breakfast tomorrow morning on that live stream.
If you're dragging a leg a little bit, you need
it's
to recover.
A breakfast that will soak everything else up in the stomach. So again, you got to watch. You got to watch this live stream.
Digestive tips with Austin Stanley.
We got a great promo that if the Vols score 30 points or more, then there's something coming your way.
It's entirely possible.
I'll tease that to the live stream with Crompton and Charlie.
Okay. Well, you got 45 against Vandy. You got 60 against the, South Alabama Jaguars.
They averaged over 50 points a game in their wins this season.
That's a ridiculous thing for you to say out loud.
I know.
I watched it all year long. It's a ridiculous thing to say. Offensive player of the year.
Is this like the NFL where it's a running back and not a quarterback? Because, Hendon Hooker is...
You get away with it a lot easier in college football.
Well, because if we're talking about MVP, then obviously the MVP is Hendon Hooker. So I will remove him from this after I give him the MVP, and so I will say Cedric Tillman.
I think that's a fair nominee. I'm so glad that he's coming back. I think that him and Hendon Hooker are going to be able to do great work in this offense again next year.
Right. Does it translate to the NFL? That's what I'm curious to see.
I mean, listen, Juwan Jennings is not a great NFL player, but there are similar skill sets there as far as big body receivers, down the field. Play speed is such an important thing in the NFL.
Tillman's more explosive than Jennings, for sure. But does this offense translate to players being ready for the NFL? Because you look at their plays, sometimes Tillman just doesn't run a route on a play because he's off on that snap, right? So how does this all work? That's the evaluation will be interesting to see how it works next season and after next season when these guys are going to the draft. But Velsto's Jr., I think, is NFL ready.
Defensive Player of the Year for these Tennessee Volunteers this year on this last Vols game day live from Nissan Stadium.
I'm going to go with Theo Jackson.
Over Alante Taylor.
Yeah, Theo Jackson was fantastic in the run game.
He's really good.
Really good in coverage. I feel like he was a leader of that defense. Was all over the place. So I'm going to go Theo Jackson. Alante Taylor's really good, and I like him a lot, but Theo more involved in every snap than a corner really can be.
Those are really, really good nominees. Again, A to Z Sports, Austin Stanley 81 is where you can follow him on the socials. You going into the game?
Yeah, I'm in the press box with you.
Look at that.
I don't know where you're sitting, but I don't know where I'm sitting either.
I imagine we would be in close proximity to each other, and at least now I have some watchful oversight so I don't overdo it in the press box media lounge.
Yeah, I'll see you at the buffet line.
Yeah, okay. When we come back, we're going to do our offensive and defensive players of the year for the Tennessee Vols on this last game day. It's the Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl. Don't forget, Ron Slay is going to be here with us in the noon hour. Slay's going to go crazy, as I'm sure he has all day, although Lil Ron broke his arm last night.
Oh, no.
Was my understanding. Slay is cut wrist. Kirby corrects me.
That's worse.
Yeah, that's got to hurt. So Lil Ron had to go to the emergency room last night. Slay is on his way because he would not miss a Vols game day for anything, especially now that his kid is secure. So we'll have Ron Slay in the noon hour. Buddy, I appreciate you hopping on.
Absolutely.
I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back from Nissan Stadium. Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl getting ready to kick off a few hours from now. Buck Reising here with you until 12:30, and then the Vol Network coverage will take over. Your home for Vols football here in Nashville, 104.5 The Zone. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in on today's conversation. Who would you give your end-of-year awards to for this Vols football team? Most improved, offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year, biggest surprise. There's a lot of different ways that you could go with this situation. A lot of orange in the crowd today, the tailgate lots. It looks like there's some form of the Vol Walk happening, even if it didn't officially happen. I think they just got off the bus and walked into the tunnel, but there was a lot of Vols fans here now excited to watch their team try and take down Purdue here in Nashville today. Sounds like they're rehearsing the anthem behind us too, which is lovely to have in the backdrop. But at this point, Lucas, who are your offensive and defensive player of the year? I'm going to wait until the end of the show to give mine, but I think we should do that. We've done that with every one of our guests today. A lot of love for Jeremy Banks as far as most improved, but is there a different way that you would look as far as the defensive standout for this Vols defense?
Yeah, I'd look at Matthew Butler along the defensive line. He was
been a stud.
Yeah, and a microcosm of the impact that Rodney Gardner has had on this team as defensive line coach. The development of Matthew Butler has been critical, and he's come out as a leader for this team. He's talked about last year not having a position coach when Jeremy Pruitt fired Jimmy Brumbaugh mid-season and then took over the duties himself.
People don't forget.
No, Butler has expressed frustrations about that. He's like, I wanted to be coached. I want to be developed by somebody that's their full-time occupation, not just the head coach spending time with the D-line. So I think he's appreciated Rodney Gardner's time at Tennessee as much as anybody else. But 43 tackles, 8.5 TFLs, 5 sacks for Butler. I think he's really played himself into potentially a nice role in the NFL.
All right, you and I are in a group text with Ron Slay right now, who's on his way to Nissan Stadium. He is as excited for this Vols game as any this season. He's going to lose his mind as soon as he gets here. We're just going to have to keep him. We're going to have to keep the show on the rails around Ron Slay. What are you texting him about this turkey leg? Is Ron Slay bringing turkey legs to the radio setup out here?
No, if you scroll up in the group message, the last thing that was sent in there was a photo that I screenshotted that I sent in because we were talking about those turkey legs in Houston. What's the place
turkey
called?
Leg Hut?
Yeah.
Turkey Leg Hut.
And it's this turkey leg covered in mac and cheese.
Keep it under control.
So when Slay texted us, I immediately saw that, and I'm starving.
All right, so we're looking forward to having Ron Slay, turkey leg or no turkey leg, here with us at the broadcast setup outside of Nissan Stadium. So at this point, we've talked about the game at length. We've broken it down with Austin Burlage and with Austin Stanley. Ron Slay is going to get the hype train going, HEUP, hype train, today. But from an offensive player of the year standpoint, do you go quarterback? Do you go Cedric Tillman? Do you go other?
I think it's Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker saved Tennessee's season. But
saved their season.
Yes, Hendon Hooker
saved their season.
Absolutely, Hendon Hooker saved Tennessee's season. If Hendon Hooker doesn't come in for Joe Milton, I mean, maybe this team is able to get to 6-6. But even that's a doubt, I think. I mean, I don't know. Is that an extreme thing to say that Tennessee would struggle to get to 6-6 with Joe Milton at quarterback?
No, I don't disagree. I mean, certainly I think everybody felt that way after the Pitt game. You saw missed opportunities all over the field in the early going for Tennessee because of the just missteps at quarterback, right? Little one or two plays, but they end up being devastating when you look at how close the margin of victory ends up being, or how much better, how much more competitive you could have been against teams like Pitt, who ended up being the ACC champion this season after winning the ACC championship. By the way, Kenny Pickett, if you're not paying attention to the bowl game opt-outs, he's one of the top quarterbacks in this upcoming draft class. He's opted out of the Peach Bowl, as has Kenneth Walker, 2 Heisman finalists not playing in their bowl game. And Tennessee, as far as the fans are concerned, for the product that's going to be on the field today, only guys that you're missing are Alontae Taylor and Cade Mays. Very good players, hugely talented players, but for the most part, unlike the opposition for Purdue, they're going to be lacking a couple of key starters as well on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. What you got, Lucas?
For Tennessee fans, kind of put it in context how shorthanded Purdue is. That would be like if Tennessee had to go into this game without Cedric Tillman, without Velus Jones Jr., without Darnell Wright at left tackle. They are without their best cover corner in Alontae Taylor, so that matches up. But just thinking about the impact that those guys would have had being out, that kind of puts it into context what Purdue and their best pass rusher, who's a potentially first round draft pick, it'd be like Tennessee being without, Tyler Barron or something. So that kind of puts it into context just how depleted this Purdue team is.
When we come back, Ron Slay's going to be, he's not going to be in the building. He's going to be in the building today at Nissan Stadium, but Ron Slay is going to be at the broadcast setup right outside of Nissan Stadium. Buck Reising here with you until 12:30, getting you ready for the Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl between the Volunteers and Purdue Boilermakers later this afternoon. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome in. Final hour, half hour here for us on 104.5 The Zone. The gates at Nissan Stadium are open. The Vols fans are streaming in. There's a ton of orange at Nissan Stadium today. Let them hear you. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. We're getting you ready for the Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl. University of Tennessee playing against the Purdue Boilermakers in Nashville today. Going to have Ron Slay here with us at the broadcast booth momentarily. We're having a great time here as well, and I'm looking forward to going into Nissan Stadium to watching this game today. Normally, I don't get Vol game days off, but I'm going to get to experience this in person for the first time. Looks like it's going to be a pretty unique one here in Nashville today. So we'll do keys for the game, and we'll talk about the end of season superlatives because this is the last Vols game day of the year. Unfortunately, it's been a really, really fun season, and Tennessee will look to capitalize on the momentum that they've built over the course of the last couple of months with a big win here in Nashville today. But Lucas, you said that the bowl game before this, the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Things are happening in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. You want to give people an update on what's happening between North Carolina and South Carolina, or does this have anything to do with football at all?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what's happening on the field. South Carolina is playing really well. They're up 25-13 at the half. They kind of jumped on UNC early with a big play and haven't looked back yet. But this is just glorious. Everything that's happening in Charlotte, North Carolina right now. You got cheerleaders eating mayonnaise out of the jar on the sideline.
Really
You've got our buddy Mike Golick Jr. dipping what looks like Oreos into mayonnaise and trying different combinations.
Audio of this can we give people an audio representation of the kind of disgustingness that's happening at the Duke's Mayo Bowl today?
I can find. I do have a great quip by Mike Golick Jr. on their way to one break. I'm sure I can find the video of him dipping Oreos into mayonnaise.
I'm deeply disturbed by the idea of a grown man dipping Oreos into mayonnaise, but that's how people are pre-gaming the Music City Bowl today alongside this great bowl season that we have. There can never be enough bowl games. I refuse to. People like Danny Cannell complaining yesterday on social media about how there are just too many bowl games. It's not true.
There's no good argument for that. There's
none.
Not a good argument.
The market demands more football. Give it more football. Go Vols. There's a lot of people saying go Vols out here today. So let's do some keys to the game, and we'll do this again with Ron Slay once he makes his way to the broadcast booth outside of Nissan Stadium. We're outside the Pro Shop, by the way, if you're walking in. Vols fans streaming in right now. Keys to the game as far as beating this Purdue team, I think it starts with the takeaways, right? Tennessee has been exceptional at taking the ball away all season long on defense. They've been hugely effective. They came into week 3 without having forced a turnover. Our buddy Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel making his way into the stadium. Capital J journalist. Looking forward to seeing him in the press box today. But takeaways, they weren't happening at the start of the season. And then, the floodgates basically opened. In the last 9 weeks of the season, the Vols forced 13 turnovers. They had 10 interceptions. So taking the ball away today is going to be a big part of how Tennessee finds success. Again, Lucas, do you have the gambling line on this? Let me look at my DraftKings Sportsbook app. I'm curious how many points Tennessee is favored by against Purdue here in Nashville today, because obviously there's going to be a home field advantage.
Yeah.
But
I bet it's close to a touchdown at this point.
I would be shocked if it's not more, right? With all the opt-outs that Purdue has had.
It's crazy
on both
to think
sides of the ball.
It started with Purdue as a favorite, right when the bowl game was announced, and then it kind of started to creep over to the Vol side. I got it at -2.5 with Tennessee as the favorite. What do you have it at now?
DraftKings Sportsbook has Tennessee as a 7.5-point favorite right now here in Nashville.
Wow.
So that line has obviously grown in the weeks since Purdue has had opt-outs. This would have been a hugely compelling regular season matchup if both sides were at full strength. I would have really liked to see that game because Purdue always has 4 or 5 really talented football players. David Bell, the wide receiver. George Karlaftis is going to be a first-round pick at defensive end. Neither of those guys, obviously, are playing against Tennessee today. But the takeaways is the first key to the game. Again, 10 interceptions in the last 9 weeks of the season, 13 total turnovers for this Tennessee defense. We've talked about how well Theo Jackson has played this season. We know that Alontae Taylor is not going to be available for the Vols today. But, Aaron Beasley, Jalen McCullough, there's a lot of good talent on this defense that is finding ways to make plays, and Tim Banks putting them in a position to succeed. Now, as far as defensive keys are concerned, there's been a lot of safeties that Tennessee has forced. They've forced opponents into 3 safeties this season. It's the most in a single season in program history since these things started being tracked in 1952. So the Vols defense, when the opposing offense is inside of their own 20, they've been very, very aggressive in creating points that way as well. Ron Slay is going to be on the phone today, Lucas. Is that what you've informed me?
Yes. I don't know where Slay is, but I think we're going to have to get him on the phone here.
All right, why don't you give him a call? He must have listened. The fact that Slay was going to try and get here today after his kid broke his wrist last night and he spent all night in the emergency room, I appreciated the effort from Ron Slay, but he'll join us on the phone here in just a second.
Do you want to hear our buddy Mike eat mayonnaise in the meantime?
Is it going to be disgusting? Is it going to be disgusting?
Mike, you came up with ideas, unconventional foods that work with mayonnaise. We're starting with what?
Cream-filled cookies here.
You first.
Take a dip. It's a really interesting blend of flavors. Thumbs up for me.
That was, what is he doing?
He's eating mayonnaise.
What is it? Just by the spoonful, by the cookieful. I don't know that there's going to be any mayonnaise-dipped coaches or cookies today at the Music City Bowl with Josh Heupel and Jeff Brom. I want people to, if you missed the start of the show, we played some audio from Josh Heupel talking about just how important this bowl game is for this program, especially given the fact that they're playing in Nashville today, right? They come in hot. They're practicing at Vanderbilt all week. Matthew Butler is delighting in the fact that they're practicing at Vandy all week because he can stomp on the logo, and Vandy can't do anything about it. Vols have really leaned into the idea that they are Nashville's team, and there's been precious little evidence to dispute that, certainly. But Josh Heupel talking about what this bowl game means to be able to capitalize with a win, potentially, their season, how successful it's been in trying to get to 8 wins on the year after being projected to go 6-6. This was the Vols head coach earlier this week in the Music City Bowl media availability.
If you're a great competitor, and those are traits that we try to build and recruit to and have inside of our building every single day, and what you do, it does matter. It matters in how you perform. It matters to you individually and collectively as a team. And so certainly this is a game that our players have pushed towards to, and it matters a great deal inside of our program. And a bowl game is unique in that I think it's important that they enjoy the experience when you're at home in your preparation, when you get to the bowl site early in the week. But the carrot of the whole week and the thing that you'll remember most about the experience is the game itself.
Josh Heupel speaking earlier this week about the importance of this bowl game and what a win would mean for the University of Tennessee to kind of put a little bit of a crowning jewel on what's been a really fun season given where their expectations were. I'm told that Ron Slay is on the phone right now. I'm told that there's no roof at Nissan Stadium. Where are you?
Hey, man, listen. I'm coming through traffic right now like David Jones in special teams. I'm going to make it. However I'm going to make it. I'm telling you right now what I'm going to do, bro.
You're going to make it for halftime? You're going to make it for kickoff, Slay? Where the hell
No,
are you?
I'm going to make it for your show. I'm telling you, I got to be there in front of the people, man. The people need it. I need it. It's unfair what little Ron did to me last night by breaking his wrist.
You do not put this on your son for breaking his wrist last night, Slay. You do not blame that child. Stop
Yes,
it.
I am, bro. Yes, I am. And I'm pissed. I'm pissed about having to be an adult. I don't want to be an adult.
The door is open. You need to lock it. Ron Slay is listen. There's a lot of Vols fans out here, Slay. If you can get through traffic are you coming from the ER? Where are you coming from right now?
Man, I'm now coming. I had to drop this prescription off. I'm gonna run this red light. And I love all the police.
Do not say that on the radio, Slay. There's a lot of cops that listen to our radio station, Slay. Don't say you're going to run red lights. You insane?
Okay, I'm sorry, but I love them all. But I am right now. I'm about to be turning left on 2nd Avenue and say I get there at 12:18, and I'm gonna tip whoever's at that gate to get me on in. I'm gonna tip them $100 so I can make it to the show.
All right, you've already admitted to bribing people. You've already admitted to running red lights. You have to be careful, Slay. I know you're excited. It's a game day. What are you most excited to see from these Vols today?
I am most excited to see this high-powered offense after 2 weeks of preparing and knowing that you're going to get your quarterback back, you're going to get your receiver back. What connection will this roll over into the next year? And I'm also excited to see this defense. Like, I want to see this defense get out there and pitch not a shutout, but a commanding game of this Purdue offense. Because regardless if this guy's missing for Purdue, like, this team's been together. These guys have had practice. So all the attention is on Tennessee's offense. Wouldn't it be great to see them hold them to 10 of 17 points?
Isn't that where you want to exist, though? Don't you want there to be pressure on the offense to perform? Because under Jeremy Pruitt, that was the most underwhelming part of his tenure, is how they just couldn't figure out the quarterback position and how the offense kind of languished. Don't you want there to be pressure on this offense to continue to perform up to the expectations that they've set all year long?
Yeah, without question. I think so. And I also don't want it to be known as like Mike Leach's air raid, but one that can put up points in any fashion, whether like it was Missouri running the ball, or if you want to get it to guys quickly in a screen and let them go to work, or hit guys on bombs. Like, I want this to be a multifaceted offense and be able to hold it down every single time. If we got to get in the shootout, man, that ought to be the team's worst nightmare, to get in a shootout with Tennessee.
This is going to be my first one, right? This is my first Vols game that I've got to go to in person.
And see, Buck, that's even more reason why I got to get down there to you, because you got to be able to experience this, because you ain't experiencing this with just anybody. You're experiencing this with the sleigh ride, and right there, listen, I'm something to stand up, drop my microphone, and have two people toss me beers like Stone Cold Steve Austin, crack them together, and say, hell yeah, go Vols!
Go Vols, Ron Slay, here with us on 104.5 The Zone, getting you ready for the Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl, Tennessee and Purdue. All right, Slay, we'll talk to you when we get over here. Take your time. Don't run any red lights. Don't bribe anybody to get into the parking lot earlier. There's a lot of law enforcement that listen to our radio station. You're setting yourself up for failure, my friend.
Okay, Buck, I got a quick question for you. Tell me, is this a better situation? I can park right there by Hard Rock, jump out my car, leave it running, and jump and swim to Cumberland and get over there to the other side, and maybe somebody from Vol Navy will pick me up and get me over there to you. You think that's a better idea?
I think there's somebody from Vol Navy that's probably going to pick you up. I don't know if they'll toss you back in, but they may pick you up. I'll see you when you get over here. Be safe driving. Ron Slay, there with us on 104.5 The Zone. Maybe the show's on until 12:30. We'll see if he gets here in time. It's going to be an upset. So at this point, the pressure is on the offense, like Ron Slay talked about. And honestly, it's been interesting to see some of the talking points that have been coming out of Purdue's media availability. Now, Lucas, do we know the name for the Purdue defensive back coach that was talking about Hendon Hooker this week?
I do not.
Okay, I will look that up. In the meantime, why don't we listen to what the Purdue coaches are saying about this Vols quarterback that's been the third best by quarterback rating in the nation this year?
The quarterback is very, very effective at 10 yards or less. Now, once he throws past 10 yards, he's a 40% passer.
So what he's saying there is they don't fear Hendon Hooker as a deep play quarterback. Coach Ron English, Purdue co-defensive coordinator and defensive back coach, speaking earlier this week about Hendon Hooker. And Hendon Hooker there has been a lot of efficiency in the offense. They're not asking him to make those deep passing plays the way that they had those available to them with Joe Milton, when you have a quarterback with the arm to get those plays, not always to the receiver, sometimes overshooting the receiver in those moments. But the way that they've been able to do it with Hendon Hooker, I think, is a far more effective style of offense from what you need. The thing to avoid today is those quick 3-and-outs that start to pile up when you run the kind of tempo that Josh Heupel does. You want to avoid those situations because that, if you are going to make this a ball game as a 7.5-point favorite, it is going to be because Purdue can put a couple of stops together. Even if they don't have their best defensive players, they are still a talented football team. And as Slay has talked about, they have spent this extra practice time together. So this is not somebody that you can just expect to roll over. Purdue is a well-coached football team, and it will be a good test for Tennessee. But the expectation, the pressure is absolutely on the offense to perform because they've been doing this all year long. Now, there's a couple of numbers on the wide receivers that are pretty interesting when you kind of look through the season that they've put together. Cody Burns, their wide receiver coach. The Vols are the only team in the SEC this season with 3 wide receivers with at least 6 touchdowns apiece. Cedric, Javonte Payton, and Velus Jones Jr. all have 6. There's only 2 other teams that have ever achieved that feat, Western Kentucky and SMU. The way that they've kind of mixed this group of wide receivers together with some guys that have transferred in, with some young talent that they have at their disposal, and what Josh Heupel has been able to provide for them on the offensive side of the football is as far as scheming up wide open wide receivers. I mean, Cedric Tillman, we talked about the biggest surprise of the season when we've done end-of-year superlatives. That's where I would have to go. I mean, Cedric Tillman, he's coming into the Music City Bowl today. He's put up 3 consecutive 100 receiving yard games, 4 100-yard games in his last 5. He's the first Tennessee Volunteer with 3 straight 100-yard efforts since Derrick Rogers had 3 in 2011. That's been a while. 4 100-yard receiving games are ranked 7th, tied for 7th in single-season school history. Cedric Tillman has been an absolute stud this year. I don't know how I feel about Offensive Player of the Year versus biggest surprise, because honestly, I wanted to say Hendon Hooker there for the fact that he did not start the season as the quarterback, the fact that it was pretty close during fall camp when Josh Heupel was trying to narrow it down between the 5 quarterbacks that he started with and basically the 3 that he ended up with, Harrison Bailey in the transfer portal this year after there was calls for him throughout the course of the season between when Joe Milton was struggling with his accuracy, struggling with the ability to just make the layup plays that give you an advantage in games like against Pittsburgh. But what they've landed on in Hendon Hooker is somebody that we talked about earlier with Austin Stanley at A to Z. I mean, this guy has the potential to be a Heisman candidate next year if he stays in this offense, and he is going to stay in this offense. This was somebody who was going to probably be a day 3 pick in the NFL draft if he came out this year. Quarterback class, not what you're accustomed to seeing, not what you've seen in the last couple of years, certainly. That's been watered down a lot. Spencer Rattler is the, preseason Heisman favorite, preseason first overall pick, and now he's down transferring to South Carolina through the portal and looking to kind of build his resume back up. I think, though, if you're talking about the most improved player, the biggest surprise, I don't know. I'm undecided, Lucas, between Cedric Tillman and Hendon Hooker. And I don't know why I want to give Cedric Tillman more credit than the quarterback, because I understand how dependent the receiver is on the quarterback position.
Well, I think Tillman is a fair shout because he was kind of far down the list on guys that you thought would really break out in this new offense. You thought it would be Velus Jones, who had a really nice year, especially on special teams. You really thought it would be Jalen Hyatt. We talked about him as the guy potentially to benefit most from the speed and the tempo of this offense. I mean, you mentioned the Athlon Sport. He was on the cover of the Athlon Sports.
He was on the cover of Athlon Sports.
Preseason college football preview. So I do think Tillman could qualify as that because he is not the name that came to mind when we talked about receivers that could really break out this year, and he's been the best receiver on Tennessee's roster.
The offense, I mean, they've got really, really high expectations to live up to. Tennessee has put up 60 or more points in 2 games this season in Josh Heupel's first year. They were averaging over 50 points per game. I think that it probably should be more than a touchdown favorite in terms of Tennessee just because of how many different players are playing. But DraftKings Sportsbook has it as Tennessee minus 7.5 right now. If there's going to be one player that stands out today that shows up and tilts the scales in the favor of Tennessee if it becomes a close game. I don't know that it's going to be necessarily a close game, but I don't want to, I don't want to gaslight Vols fans. I know that they are more cautiously optimistic than I am about what their football team has been. They've lived, pretty stressful existences when it comes to big games and big expectations. Not this year, though. It's felt a lot different. I think if I'm looking for one player to have a breakout performance, man, I really love Aaron Beasley as a player in this defense. I really like the Vols' depth, the ability to affect the quarterback. I thought that he's certainly been effective in recovering forced fumbles. He's been around the football constantly. When you talk to defensive coaches about the ability to swarm and make plays, to not have missed tackles, to not have yards after contact, and certainly in college football, that's all over the place, especially with an offense like Purdue. Aaron Beasley, I really, really value him as a player in this Tennessee defensive front seven that's, I think, exceeded expectations by any standard of the imagination this season. Lucas, if one player is going to stand out for you, who would it be?
Are you talking about in the context of the Music City Bowl or moving forward?
Context of the Music City Bowl.
I think Jeremy Banks and this pass rush have to have a good game. Purdue has kind of struggled to run the football, but they do a lot off of the run game and off of play action. So to not get caught over the middle of the defense, that's why I think Aaron Beasley is a good shout. But I think Jeremy Banks, Tyler Barron, Byron Young, and this Tennessee pass rush to affect O'Connell, who's already without his two best receivers. They're without over 2,000 yards of receiving production. That's over 60% of O'Connell's pass yards this year. So if they can really get in his face and not let play action be a weakness defensively today, then I think they're in pretty good shape defensively.
We've talked about turnovers. We've talked about the success of this Tennessee defense. We've talked about them being able to rack up safeties, 3 in a single season, the most in Tennessee program history. But more importantly than all of that is the ability to get a quick start. And that's what Josh Heupel does so well. In 48 games across Heupel's career, they've outscored opponents 616 to 258. Now, a couple of those years, obviously, at UCF, no active FBS head coach scores more points per first quarter in a career than Heupel has. 12.83 points per first quarter. Josh Heupel has been hugely effective at taking advantage of leads, allowing this quick pace, up-tempo offense to do what it does, to give you an advantage, and then throughout the course of the game to just basically wear the defense down because it's a grueling pace that defenders have to keep up with. And hell, it's tough for the offensive linemen for Tennessee too. It's you see those big guys huffing and puffing a little bit, hands on hips, but it ends up working to their favor because they can generate those explosive plays. Negative plays on defense we talked about. This is the second best season for a Tennessee defense as far as tackles for loss are concerned. 94 total this season. The most came in 2016 when they had 100 tackles for loss on a year. The third best season, top 3, 1996, 83 tackles for loss on the season. So there's a lot to like about this football team right now. There's a lot to like about this matchup today. And Vols fans, as they're starting to stream more and more into Nissan Stadium, are pretty excited to see how this team can kind of finish out their 2021. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in as we get ready to wrap things up on our Music City Bowl pregame program. Ron Slay's got 6 minutes left, Lucas. I don't think he's got it. I think we could see a giant sleigh sprinting across the parking lot, and I think he would still come up a minute short, which would be hilarious visually. It does nothing for the audience listening on terrestrial radio.
If we could just get him for the last 60 seconds of the program today, that would be sufficient.
He's going to get up here. He's going to grab a microphone as the clock is winding down, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. He's going to scream, "Go Vols," and then he's going to shotgun a beer Steve Austin style. I'm convinced that's what I'm going to see. Maybe a turkey leg in hand. Who knows?
Hey, by the way, you mentioned Tennessee's first quarter production this year. The Vols are favored by half a point at the end of the first quarter.
Oh, look, are you doing in-game lines
I'm just saying, if that trend continues.
I like that. Okay. That's good gambling advice from Lucas Panzica. So I guess when it comes down to it, this is the statement game for the Vols to kind of put the crown on their 2021. This is a statement game because you're playing in Nashville. This is a statement game because of how recruiting kind of panned out in Middle Tennessee this season, understandably so. But the fact that you get to play in front of this audience and get to capitalize potentially with an 8th win, 2 games better than you were projected at the start, I think is the most important thing in the world. It means so much for Vols fans right now. There's no disputing it. There are so many people who are passionate about this football team. They didn't even have a Vol Walk today. The Vol Walk got canceled, and still there was hundreds of Vols fans lining up on the side of the buses just to see Tennessee, just to not see Tennessee walk from the buses into the tunnel. It's an incredibly passionate fan base, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see them here in Nashville if their football team can have success today. I think that For Josh Heupel, I don't know how much more you could ask from a head coach in his position. We still have no idea what the NCAA situation is going to look like. It doesn't matter today. Who cares? All that matters is you've got a head coach who seems to have a legitimate plan, week in, week out, is starting to get more of his personnel to execute their plan on a weekly basis, and he's done so well that he is a first-year coach award finalist for the Steve Spurrier, don't wince, Vols fans, Steve Spurrier first-year coach award this year, along with Shane Beamer at South Carolina and Gus Malzahn at UCF. Josh Heupel's actually won this award before while he was at UCF, and Malzahn won it in previous seasons in 2013 at Auburn. It's a much different conversation, though, had around Josh Heupel than it is around Jeremy Pruitt at the end of that situation. And what a situation it turned out to be. We're going to be inside Nissan Stadium. We're going to have coverage all day long on the Vol Network. Bob Kessling is going to be on the call. You can hear the Vol Network, of course, right after our show wraps up here on 104.5 The Zone. It's been a lot of fun to hang out at Nissan Stadium. We appreciate our guests who have stopped by, Austin Burlage, Austin Stanley, Ron Slay coming from wherever in God's name he's coming from on the phone, screaming "Go Vols" as he sprints across the parking lot.
He's got 2 minutes.
He's got 2 minutes. There's 0% chance. Like, I'd never bet against Ron Slay. I'm actively betting against him right now. It's not going to happen. It's just not. He's a big man. That's a lot of mass to move that quickly in 2 minutes. We will see. But this has been a lot of fun to cover this Vols season, no matter how today turns out. Been really fun to talk about these games with the radio audience for the first time, for us. Lucas, I know I've enjoyed it. I know you've certainly had your highs and lows, but I think everything turned out okay for you, bud.
Turned out okay. By the way, South Carolina making a statement right now, pummeling North Carolina in the Mayo Bowl.
Give me a play-by-play professional update. What you got, Lucas Panzica? Give me a network control update on the Duke's Mayo Bowl as Mike Golick sits in the booth dipping Oreos into mayonnaise.
Yeah, Buck, South Carolina's gotten the second half kickoff. They've punched in a 31-13 lead, extra point pending. Cheerleaders are eating mayonnaise, and South Carolina is on its way to a winning season under first-year head coach Shane Beamer.
All right, so there's mayonnaise being eaten. There's South Carolina points being scored. Vols fans are streaming into Nissan Stadium. Ron Slay is nowhere to be seen, so I guess we're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. Vol Network coverage begins as soon as we wrap up here today, and we appreciate everybody who's hung out with us. I guess I expect, it would be great to see the Vols put up another high-scoring offensive performance, averaging over 50 points a game this season. You had 62 against Mizzou. You had 56. The Tennessee Tech game. I'm just kind of recapping some of these games in the media guide this week. It's been funny to kind of relive them. But Hendon Hooker expect a big performance with Cedric Tillman. Purdue's defense is vulnerable right now with the amount of opt-outs that they've had and with the lack of offensive firepower that they will be able to combat with. No David Bell, no George Karlaftis. Tough scene. And listen, great players. It's unfortunate that we're not going to get to see them play today, but it'll be a fun bowl game regardless. Music City Bowl, trans-perfect Music City Bowl comes your way, coming up next.